Morning. Yesterday I talked about perspective, and I talked about how important it is to see things from other people's point of view, to get into their shoes. And actually, there's a charity that runs, and it's called Walk a Mile in Her Shoes, where a bunch of people, guys, girls, everyone wears high heels and then walks a mile to give the perspective of somebody else, of going, hey, listen, look at it from somebody else's perspective. That's a beautiful thing to do. Practice looking at things from other people's perspective. For this morning, what I want to do and what I want to challenge you with is changing your own perspective. What happens, there are so many biases we have in our own minds. And what a bias is a way that our brain makes shortcuts. Okay? Some people call these heuristics or rules of thumb, but they're basically ways our brains work to make something a little bit faster. Because our brains are like efficiency. They like utilizing less energy because they're kind of pigs when it comes to energy. They use up a ton of energy. So when our brains can find something quicker, we use it, whether it works consistently or not. And rules of thumbs are exactly that. Rules of thumbs work in many situations, or at least did work in many situations at some point in time, and now they might not. So I'll give you an example. A heuristic that a lot of people use is they are afraid of conflict, because maybe as kids, when they got into conflict situations, maybe they were on the losing end of that. So they started to realize and learn that if they kind of back down from things, they stay a little bit safer. So that's a way that we think, or the way we act, that worked at one point in time doesn't work any longer. But a bias is usually a shorter term heuristic. It's a shorter term rule of thumb, a thing that we utilize to say, oh, this must be the case. So I'll give you a couple. One is recency bias. And this is actually the biggest one that I want to talk about today. What recency bias is that maybe you had a fantastic month. Maybe it is, pick the month and pick any month, and you look over the last 30 days and you go, I actually had 25 great days, but the last 4 or 5 days have been really hard. In that case, most people will go, oh, this has been a rough month. This has been a hard month. This has been a horrible month. And the reason we think about that is that our minds typically look at what is most recent and put a greater emphasis on that. So even if you had a fantastic decade and then you've had a rough few days, typically we'll focus on the rough few days, and as well as the opposite. There's a really unique research that goes into this. I'll give you an example. They took people's hands and they put them in cold water. I think it was something like 14 degrees. I got to go back and look at the research. It was 13 or 14 degrees of water. So that's cold water for our hands. And as with college students, they put people's hands in this cold water for 30 seconds. And then they did the experiment again. I don't remember how much later it was, like a couple of hours later, or maybe it was the next day. So they put their hand for 30 seconds and took it out, and then said, what was your experience like? They gave them a couple of tests, a survey and questionnaire. And then the next day, or whenever the second time was, they took the same people and put their hand in the same temperature of water for 30 seconds. So it's 13 degrees or whatever. 30 seconds, and then they took the hand out and moved it into water that was 1 degree warmer. So instead of 13 degrees, now it was 14 degrees. And they put their hand in the 14 degree water for another 30 seconds. Now, 14 degree water is not warm. I'm talking about Celsius here, okay? That's not warm. That's cold water. Having said that, it's a little bit warmer than 13 degree water. And so it leaves a different perspective. Recency bias states that now the people feel better about it. And this bore out in the results. What they did was they asked these students afterwards, which would you prefer to do? If we could do either experiment again, would you rather have your hand in 13 degree water for 30 seconds? Or would you rather have your hand in 13 degree water for 30 seconds, and then after that, 14 degree water for 30 seconds? And guess what almost everyone chose? They chose the second option, which is crazy if you think about this logically, because they were putting their hands in cold water and then cold water for twice as long. But what the change is that we utilize recency bias in their heads, and they were left with a better impression because it was cold, and then it was a little bit warmer. A little bit warmer. And so recency bias plays this effect. So here's what I'm going to ask you to and challenge you to do. I said I was going to talk about a few biases. Maybe I'll just leave it at recency bias for this time. I'll talk about biases maybe in a later mini series, okay? Because they're really, really important to understand about yourself. You utilize these all the time in your life, and they get us into trouble all the time in our lives. So it can help to understand them. What I want you to think about is that hand in cold water, 13 degree to 14 degree water, and how it left somebody with a better impression. Or think about your month and a few hard days at the end, or a crazy month that has a few good days at the end. And here's what I want you to start utilizing. I want you to start ending your day. Every day, I want you to finish it on a high note. Every week, I want you to finish it on a high note. Every month, I want you to finish on a high note. Every year, finish on a high note. What will happen as you do this is that you will start, when you look back at your experiences, how was my day? How was my week? How was my month? How was my year? You will start going, I had a great month. I had a great year. I had a great week. And the reason for this is because you will be utilizing your own bias to your benefit rather than your own harm. And this is why it will help you. Because now you will have more confidence going into your next day, into your next week. Here's a simple way you can do this. At the end of every day, simply ask yourself, what are 3 things that I did well today? That's it. What are 3 things that I did well today? And as you practice, at the beginning it might be difficult. If you've trained yourself to think about all the things that are going wrong, it might take a bit of time. But practice this. And as you practice it, you'll get better at it. And as you get better at it, you'll start realizing, my days are going really well. And it'll put you in a better state for the next morning. You'll start off your next morning better. You'll have more momentum. You'll have more confidence. You'll end up closing more deals. You end up doing better business. You'll have better relationships because you're feeling better about yourself. That's as simple as it can be. Now, there's more to it than this. But for today, that's all I want to challenge you to do. Tonight, make it a commitment that you are going to, for the next 3 months, that's a great time frame, okay? 90 days is a great time frame, 60 to 90. Make a commitment for 90 days that you are going to, every night, write down 3 things that you did well. 3 things that you did well. And simply by writing it out and thinking about it, because it takes a little bit of time to write it out rather than just think about it in your head, make sure you write it out. Taking that time to do it is going to set a standard, set a perspective for yourself. We're going to start seeing things as like, you know what, I'm doing all right. And when that happens, you'll start feeling better about yourself. You will start with more confidence. You will start building momentum in your life. And you will start doing better business. Enjoy this process. Have a lot of fun with it. It might be hard at times. Push through it. Trust me, it's fantastic. For every client I've ever had, do this. Enjoy your day.